Lynn's voice was husky. I love you, I'm sorry. I wanted to tell her to rest, to conserve her strength, but she was gone. A month ago, cancer took my wife of 22 years. Or rather, it took us. Me and the 3 children she'd given me. Jenny, our oldest daughter of 18, Matt, my only son of 15, and our baby girl, 13-year-old Paula. Lynn's death was hard on all of us, but Matt and Paula took it the hardest. In a way, I was well prepared for this grief. It was an old guest coming to darken my doorstep once again. My mother had died in a car accident when I was 7 years old, and my father had passed away from a stress-induced heart attack when I was in college. Lynn saw me one last time, and something she said to me eased my pain. It was a quote with no specific origin. Grief is love with nowhere to go. I've heard different versions of this quote, slight word changes or paraphrases, but this one was my favorite, the one Lynn told me, and the one I passed on to our children. It was an unwanted but desperately needed heirloom that she could no longer give them herself. It helped them cope, both the words themselves and the realization that the phrase was one I had learned from their mother. Matt found a particular comfort in it. Apparently it was close to one uttered on one of his superhero TV shows. Whatever it worked. The kids, like me, went to a grief counselor. That helped too. But in the end, only time could heal the wound, if it could be healed at all. I tried my best to share their grief but not overdo it. It was hard, but the fact that I could at least try to do so was another gift from Lynn. My mother was the parent in my life who knew how to adequately deal with my emotions, and when she was gone, I was left with the stoic presence of my father. He loved me, but he had a hard time showing it. It was hard for him to show any emotion. He cried at my mother's funeral, but that was it. He didn't try to stop me from grieving, but he didn't guide me through it either. My emotional development was stunted as a child. And it wasn't until I met and fell in love with Lynn that I learned to express my feelings again. I was never as good at it as she was. There are some things you learn as a child, or not at all. But gradually, over the course of our courtship and marriage, I came out of my shell. She helped me grieve from my father in a way that he never helped me grieve from my mother. She taught me to show love openly, to treat it not as a weakness to be taken advantage of by others, but as a strength that strengthens me in my relationship with the world. She was the one great love of my life. Her death was the greatest test of the lessons she taught me. Lynn was a very emotional woman, especially when we were younger. She came from a bohemian background. Her father was a writer and her mother was an artist. Before our children were born, she was undisciplined. She relied on me as the primary breadwinner and took care of the day-to-day minutiae of our lives. But by the time Paula was a year old, she had become as reliable and stable a partner as I could wish for, changing from her somewhat passive position to a new, active, and disciplined one. She could still fantasize sometimes, which I enjoyed, but she had become the kind of reliable and stable partner a father of 3 young children needs. Her foresight proved invaluable after her death. That's why we had large life insurance policies, even at our relatively young ages. It's why she took care of the funeral arrangements ahead of time, so I wouldn't have to deal with it while I was trying to take care of our children and myself. And that's why Marcus Devereaux was standing on my front porch with a leather satchel in his hands. Mr. Devereaux had called me the day before. He said he was an attorney, and that Lynn had asked him to handle a special bequest that had not been included in our will. He declined to give me details over the phone, but asked to come over to my house the next day at 1 p.m. When asked why we couldn't meet at his or my office, he replied that the place and time were part of Lynn's instructions to him. He was a tall, slender black man with a shaved head and graying beard. It was hard to determine his age, but if I guessed, he was about 10 to 15 years older than my 44. His well-tailored suit was coatless. Odd, considering the cold weather, but not particularly so. A kind, albeit somewhat impersonal smile played across his face as he extended his hand. Mr. Jenkins? He had a deeper voice than I'd expected from such a slender man, a rich baritone. Kurt! I shook his hand. The grip was good, firm, with no attempt to play silly games. Marcus Devereaux. Marcus, if you will. May I come in? I led him into our living room. Before I could offer him a seat and a drink, he asked, "Which way is your dining room? I'm afraid your wife was quite specific in her instructions." I raised an eyebrow and he smiled again. I know that sounds odd, but it's far from the most eccentric instruction I've received in my career. I shrugged and invited him to follow me. Once there, I asked, "What's the matter?" "Patience, please. I promise we'll get to that soon." He looked around. "Do you have a small trash can? A trash can, something like that?" "Sure, I'll go get it." When I returned from my home office, he told me to sit down and then place the trash can to one side of me. After that, he sat down at the desk across from me, in the seat that Lynn usually occupied. "Kurt, can you tell me a little bit about Lynn? I spent very little time with her, no more than a few hours. I'm sorry to say that she was in a lot of pain, but she was very focused. Can you tell me what she was like, as a person and as a mother?" "Lynn was wonderful, fun, smart, loving, a great giggler." He looked at me sympathetically as I smiled. Sadly, "I guess that's what I miss the most. Home was so—" I shook my head. "Her parents were artists and she had a lot of that energy in her. When we were younger, she was a little flighty, but that went away as the kids came along. When Paula went to school, she helped the kids with everything. Just a great mom. She always had time for them." "And how's the wife?" I felt a strange sensation as if a distant alarm had sounded. "What are you talking about?" Marcus tilted his head. "Partly it's personal curiosity, as I said. But partly, well, it would be useful for me to know. I can't tell you more than that yet, but I assure you, telling me what you think of her would be quite in keeping with her wishes." This was awkward. He was a stranger, and a lawyer. It felt like a trap, but at the same time, if it was in line with Lynn's wishes. I shrugged. She was a great wife, the very best. A loving, wonderful partner. I could talk to her about anything, and I think she felt the same way about me. We had our issues, as all couples do, but most of them resolved over a decade ago. She was a rock when she was diagnosed, and I was not. If I'd been married to any other woman, I don't know how I would have handled it. I looked down at my hands. I'll miss her for the rest of my life. She was my life in so many ways. "Thank you, Kurt. For my part, I can tell you that she loved you very much. She spoke of you in the best possible terms. Even through the pain, I could tell—" He shook his head. "I guess we should get started." Marcus placed his satchel on the table and began pulling out 4 items: an envelope, a bottle of whiskey, and a pair of glasses. Each was of particular interest to me. The envelope had my name written on it in Lynn's sprawling cursive handwriting. The whiskey was an unopened Macallan 25-year sherry oak, a very expensive bottle. And the glasses, though themselves quite plain and unremarkable, were a bad omen. When Lynn had to give me bad news, we would sit like this. She waited until early lunch on a school day or late afternoon on weekends, a time when the kids couldn't disturb us. We would sit at the table in the seats that Marcus and I now occupied. She would bring 2 glasses and a bottle of scotch and pour us each a glass. When we finished our drinks, she would pour another one, which we weren't allowed to touch until she had finished what she wanted to say. It was a ritual she learned early in our marriage to help me deal with the pain I felt when I received particularly bad news. She taught me how to deal with my emotions, as I said, but particularly strong emotions still couldn't handle their intensity. When she lost her mother, that's how she broke the news to me. When she was fired from her job, that's how she broke the news to me. And when she found out she had previously undiagnosed stage 4 cancer, this is how she broke the news to me. The ritual was painful, but it gave the pain a familiar shape rather than leaving it free and uncontrollable. He poured each of us a glass and held it out to me. I took a sip. It was a fine scotch, and drinking it quickly was sacrilege. Besides, sipping it gave me time to think. "Marcus, why are you here?" His voice was steady. "Your wife assigned me to do what we're doing now. I'll only be able to give you the details after we've followed an initial set of instructions. Can you tell me how you were hired? I had never heard of you until yesterday." Marcus considered his next words carefully. "Your wife consulted with several attorneys to find one she felt was suitable for the task at hand, but again, I can't tell you exactly what qualities she required until we finalize the initial set of instructions. And I believe the instructions boil down to this: drink a very good whiskey, and then—" Did I read the letter? Did you? Yes. You read it? He nodded. I personally helped her prepare it. No one else was involved. I took a deep breath and finished the rest of the Macallan in my glass, then reached for the letter. Instead, he took the bottle again and leaned across the table and poured another finger into my glass. A deep voice said, "Drink up." My eyebrows furrowed. "No, that's not right. Lynn would pour me one glass, I'd finish it, and then drink the second one after she gave me her news." His voice was flat, a hint of regret in it. "Mr. Jenkins." "Kurt, I'm the only person alive who knows what's in that envelope. And I'm telling you, drink the other one now before you read it." I swallowed before I could bring the glass to my lips. "Marcus, what?" "Drink it." His voice changed, becoming sympathetic but firm. "Please, Kurt, you don't know me, and you have no reason to trust me, but man to man, have a drink." I shouldn't have just thrown it back. As I said, that was sacrilege. But my ritual had already been desecrated, so what was an expensive glass of whiskey in the grand scheme of things? He held out his hand for the glass and then handed me an envelope. As I opened it, he poured another finger into my glass, but left it on his side of the table. I raised an eyebrow. "If I give it to you now, you'll drink it before you finish half of it." I pulled the letter out of the envelope. It was long, several pages of typewritten text. I flipped through it quickly without reading it, and the only handwriting was Lynn's signature on the last page. Returning to the first, I began to read to myself. "My dearest love, this is the hardest letter I have ever had to write. I love you very much, and I know you love me too. I am sure you are in great pain right now. That is why I asked Mr. Devereaux to deliver this letter a month after my death, so that you would not encounter what you read here while in deep sorrow. It may seem cruel to allocate time in this way, but I promise you the following. I am only doing this because I love you and the kids. I have to say it again. I love you. You are the greatest love of my life. I wish things could have been different. I wish we had spent our golden years together traveling and playing with our grandchildren. My biggest regret is not my death, but that my death will leave you alone for so long. I hope you find someone to share the rest of your life with. I even hope that after my death you find the greatest love of your life, that what we had together pales in comparison to the love that will sustain you for the rest of your years. I have to say I love you again because what will follow is so hard. Because it will make you question my words. It will make you question my love. This is a bigger pain for me than any cancer, any tumor, radiation, or chemotherapy. But I know you, my love, and I know how you will feel when you read this letter. I'm so sorry to do this to you, but please, rest assured, I love you more than any man I've ever loved. I could not hope for a better husband. The words in this letter are meant to explain my behavior and how it will affect your life going forward. They do not serve as an excuse. I have no excuses or justifications for what I have done. They are not written to earn forgiveness. I cannot count on your forgiveness. But they are meant to give you a chance to make sense of the cruel hand that fate has dealt you. If I could lift that burden from you, I would do anything. But I can't. I can only tell you what I've done and hope that someday you can recover from the damage the truth will do to you. Kurt, the simple truth is this. You are the greatest love of my life, but you are not the only man I have loved during our marriage. I reread that sentence several times to make sure I understood it correctly. Kurt, the simple truth is this. You are the greatest love of my life, but you are not the only man I have loved during our marriage. You are the greatest love of my life, but you are not the only man I have loved during our marriage. You're not the only man I've loved during our marriage. I blinked and looked up into Marcus's face. He nodded, his lips tightly pressed together. I looked at the tumbler standing at arm's length. He was right. Sighing, he said, "I'm sorry, Kurt. Worse things happen." I opened my mouth to speak, but he only nodded at the letter. We didn't follow the original instructions. I write these words with the greatest shame. Please understand, you have done nothing wrong. You are not to blame for my infidelity, even though I convinced myself otherwise at the time. You are, as I've written before, the best husband I could have ever wished for. You were a wonderful lover, a generous provider, and a wonderful father. You're not the reason I lost my way. It was me. I lost my way because I was weak, proud, and stupid. I lost my way because I needed something I thought you couldn't give, even though I didn't really ask you for it. I thought I knew the limits of your love, but instead they turned out to be the limits of mine. I tell you details that you might have preferred to keep silent about. I tell them because Mr. Devereaux has convinced me that not to do so would be cruel. I am not trying to flaunt my infidelities. As I said, they cause me shame. But I am dead, and my shame no longer matters. Only your ability to overcome it and keep our children safe matters. I raised my eyes to Devereaux. Keep our children safe? What the hell does that mean? What the hell is this, asshole? You, you son of a bitch, did you entertain my wife? He shook his head. No, Kurt. Her affair ended long before I met her. And you can call me any name you want, I assure you. You're not wrong about any of them. But the understanding you need, namely most of it, will only come if you keep reading. Muttering threats and insults, I returned to the hateful letter. My downfall came after Jennifer was born, but its seeds were laid in the earliest days of our relationship. From the very beginning, you intrigued me, and then made me fall in love with you. You were so quiet and reserved, but at the same time you were stable and smart. My parents were smart but not stable. They were free-spirited to the point of stupidity. I loved them, but I fell in love with you for a reason. I needed a counterbalance to the life I had before. I needed a man I felt safe with and cared for. I didn't expect you to love me. At first, I wasn't sure you were capable of it. But as I got to know you, as you told me about your mother's death and your childhood, as I understood you better, I began to fall in love with you. You were just as you had described your father to me, a man capable of love, but almost incapable of showing it. But then he was gone, suddenly and unexpectedly, and you grieved. I helped you cope, and somewhere in there, in that display of grief, the floodgates opened. The love you held within you washed over me as I comforted you. I knew you would provide me not only stability but love. And I wanted to believe that my love and the way you were able to love me would make you a better, stronger person. I still believe that. I only wish it had made me a better woman. My ego was quite inflated in those days, I'm sure you remember. You weren't the only man I was interested in, but I knew I was the first woman you had real emotional intimacy with. Not physically, of course, but I was the first woman you loved. It made me feel powerful. That strength I wanted to use for the good of our happiness, but feeling powerful breeds arrogance, even if it never manifests itself in outward actions. We got married. The early marriage was fine. We both worked, but we both realized that it was necessary so that you could build a business and I could someday stop working and raise children. You worked long hours, and I began to miss you. Your love, once it broke free, was like the sun, and I missed basking in its rays. I didn't cheat on you. That was the furthest thing from my mind. Instead, if you remember, I skipped a few birth control pills. But now I have a confession to make. I didn't skip them. I just didn't take them. That was the first lie I told you. I was stupid. I thought that if we had a child, you'd be around more often, not working to provide for our future. I thought that even if we didn't, the love of a child could sustain me until you could shine for me again. I didn't think about the hardships that having a baby would bring, about how it would drain me. Sure, I was warned by our friends who had children of their own, but I didn't heed. You provided stability in my life, and surely that would have been enough. Even if it hadn't been, I was used to the fact that a beautiful woman with a sharp mind could sometimes shirk responsibility like dancing between raindrops. However, neither of those things saved me. Jennifer was a beautiful child. I don't regret giving birth to her in the slightest. But it quickly became clear how wrong I was. You provided stability, but it cost me a lot of time while I was recovering. When you were with us, your sunshine shone on our daughter, and I felt in the shadows. I know you didn't want that, and I should have expected it. It's not that you neglected me. You still showed me affection when it was just the two of us, but that time was limited. And then the second blow to our happiness happened. My mom died just before Jennifer turned 1 year old. I was inconsolable, as you may remember. We weren't close until the end. You never got along, and she didn't think a businessman was what I needed. But I still loved her, and the pain was almost overwhelming. You tried to comfort me, but her death didn't mean you miraculously had more time or energy to help me. You did what you could, but by then you were no better at dealing with grief than you had been since my father's death. I was mostly on my own. I was getting worse because I was getting worse. I had a rain cloud hanging over me and I couldn't get out from under it. Looking back, I wonder if I had postpartum depression. It might help explain my mood and behavior, but it still wouldn't excuse it. After my mother died, I became useless, and then I was fired. It didn't happen when you thought it would. That was the second lie. When Jennifer's daycare was paid for almost a month, I tried to come to my senses. I visited museums and galleries trying to reconnect with the memory of my mother and the young, beautiful woman I used to be, the one who could dance between raindrops. And that's where I met Jeremy. Jeremy? Who the hell was Jeremy? I racked my brain, trying to remember if I'd ever met this man, if I'd ever heard his name. I couldn't remember anything. He was a little older than us, only a year or two older. He was a handsome man, but that wasn't what attracted me to him. He looked at the same works of art as I did, as if he was looking for something at the same time and in the same places. We visited 3 different galleries with him before he introduced himself. He was an artist, like my mother, and he was lost, like me. Jeremy was the last scion of a wealthy family, the black sheep, until he was left alone. He expected to receive a small inheritance, but earlier that year, his parents and older brother were killed in a private plane crash. When that happened, he suddenly found himself in a situation he was completely unprepared for. He had his own small house and was living on welfare, but now he had to face multi-generational wealth and people who had been hired to help him manage that wealth. He wanted nothing to do with the money or the mansion. He rejected them for a reason, but rejected them in a way that allowed him to become an artist and not starve to death. Jeremy knew it was hypocritical, but right now he wanted to give away as much of his family's wealth as possible. Unfortunately, the people running the company stood in his way because their careers depended on royalties, and those royalties were commensurate with the amount of wealth he had accumulated. I didn't know about it right away. We were just meeting and talking about art. But I would tell him my problems and he would tell me his. I didn't have a solution to his big problem, but I understood the essence of it. He was an artist and thought like an artist. Because of this, he couldn't deal effectively with many things in the real world. Most artists cope. The realities of everyday life can be very instructive. But he also grew up in affluence without absorbing any knowledge of what it takes to simply survive in the real world, without access to the maids, valets, assistants, and other servants he grew up with. That's partly why I so appreciated the stability you gave me, Kurt. I had to be an adult when I was a kid. Bills sometimes went unpaid if I didn't take care of them. My parents might not go to the doctor's office or miss other important appointments. In essence, by the time I was 12 years old, I had become their personal assistant. I freed myself from that responsibility at 18 and enjoyed my newfound freedom during my college years. It wasn't until I met you that I realized that I could have freedom and stability, that you could provide me with the latter, and I would teach you how to be free in your feelings. Jeremy presented the opposite problem. He knew how to feel, but he couldn't take care of himself. He needed someone to provide him with stability. So, taking my time, I talked to him about how to organize his household, where he should look for different people to manage his money, how to create systems that would allow him to meet his responsibilities without letting them overwhelm him. He insisted that I get paid. I told him my previous salary, but he refused to budge and set my salary at twice that. That was the first year I did our taxes for you. Working with Jeremy made me stretch long-forgotten muscles, and I learned the simple joy of responsibility, of doing things without help. I confused the overwhelming feelings of being a teenager trying to run the household of 2 irresponsible parents with what it's like to take care of myself and my family. That's partly why I took on these responsibilities. The other reason was that I wasn't ready to tell you about it yet. Not because I was ashamed. I was ashamed that I had been fired and that I had waited so long to tell you about it. The longer I waited, the stronger that shame became. And then I would have to explain how we managed to stay afloat financially, which meant you would find out that I had kept something else from you, and it was turning into a shame spiral. There was no other option but to come clean, and I just couldn't bring myself to do it. That's also when I took over the running of our checkbook, if you remember. Jeremy would pay me in cash, and I would transfer the right amount from my old job into our account. Then I'd tell you I'd gotten a raise and add a little more. That pretty much took the pressure off our situation, and you were freed up a bit to devote more time and affection to both Jennifer and me. The means were wrong, but the result was worth it. We were all happy, and Jeremy was happy too. I'm pretty sure they call him neurodivergent these days. He had ADHD, autism, or both, though he was never diagnosed. He could make beautiful kinetic sculptures, but he couldn't keep his house clean. He could remember his favorite things, but not what day he needed to pay his bills. On the other hand, when the house was clean, he could concentrate better. I hired a maid for him and his productivity increased dramatically. I helped him get organized and stay on schedule, and he was happier. I became his personal assistant without a title, and it was the best I ever felt at work. We became close, not yet physically, but an emotional attachment developed. He helped me get over my mother's death and resentment toward her, which, to my regret, you were unable to do at the time. You were a loving person, but that love did not reach the emotional depth necessary for such a difficult task. I helped him deal with a contentious relationship with his late family. It was simple. Because of his longtime pariah status, he had no warm feelings for them, despised their wealth and the way they used it to suppress others. I started staying late to help him develop a new project he wanted to work on or to share ideas with him. I hadn't inherited any artistic ability from my parents, but I understood logistics better than anyone else he knew. I could tell him what would work and what wouldn't from a purely physical standpoint, and give him an accurate estimate of how long a particular project would take. As we grew closer, I became more and more accurate in these estimates. Eventually, our relationship turned physical. It wasn't due to some kind of disconnect between us. At that point, we were better off than we had ever been. Nor was it precipitated by some major event in his life. One night, we were just working late one night, and he kissed me. It was unexpected, but I knew our friendship had grown into love even before that. I felt guilty for breaking my vows to you, but the physical relationship was simply an expression of the love I felt for him. He was already your secret, and perhaps that's why it was easier for me to cross the line that blurred the lines between employer, friend, and lover. I told myself I wasn't taking anything away from you. Of course, that was a lie. I thought I was in debt, that I was supporting two men and raising the children of one of them. It was prideful and selfish, but I allowed myself to think that way. I worked late nights and sometimes weekends, spending time mostly at work, but sometimes with Jeremy in a more intimate setting. I wanted to believe that. I looked at the trash can next to me, finally realizing why it was there. Marcus hadn't put an envelope or a letter next to me. My stomach rumbled, and I took a deep breath to calm myself. Lynn, the love of my life, the mother of my children, had cheated on me, and not just once, but many times over what seemed like years. I tried to hold back the gagging. Marcus looked on sympathetically. He knew there was nothing he could do to ease my feelings, even if I followed the original instructions. I still wasn't quite sure why he was here, but I was beginning to suspect it was at least partly to keep me from doing something stupid. Good luck with that. I was going to kill that asshole Jeremy, and some 60-year-old lawyer wasn't going to slow me down. The world slowly stopped spinning. I went back to the letter, hoping the worst was over, but knowing that it probably wasn't. Of course, it was a lie. I felt like I owed it to myself, that I had supported two men in different ways and raised the children of one of them. It was prideful and selfish, but I allowed myself to think that way. I worked late into the night and sometimes on weekends, spending time mostly at work, but sometimes with Jeremy, in a more intimate setting. I wanted to believe that what I was doing was benefiting us all. Jeremy got the help and love he was sorely lacking. I was able to relearn the skills and attitude to be a better partner for you, and you felt less obligated to help me cope and provide for my family. That's what I told myself so I wouldn't feel the guilt I knew I should have felt more acutely. I know you'll have a lot of questions, but I won't answer any of them regarding sex with Jeremy. I won't go into detail about how he and I spent our time together. That won't help you. I'll just say one thing. If I had to choose a lover for the rest of my life, it would be you, always and without question. You're the best lover I've ever had. What I had with Jeremy was just a way for me to feel close to each other. For the next 5 years. Oh my God, 5 years. 5? I stood up uncertainly. What? Why did you? I began to rage. I loved her. Why did you? I wanted to grab that insolent asshole by the lapels and shake him until his head fell off. I felt nauseous, but I wasn't about to give this sadistic asshole the pleasure of throwing up in the goddamn trash can. He started to get up, but my glare told him that was a bad idea. Staggering, I made my way to the adjoining guest bathroom and emptied my stomach into the toilet, then flushed my lunch and a couple $100 worth of whiskey down the drain. Tears streamed down my face, both from vomiting and from having my heart broken in a new and horrible way. I thought I had no tears left after the last month. I was wrong. After washing my face and rinsing my mouth for 10 minutes, I took a deep breath and turned back to my tormentor. He was still sitting in the same spot with a disgruntled expression on his face. I stood behind the chair, resting my hands on the top of the backrest. Why? He opened his mouth to speak, but I interrupted him. If you say one word about your instructions, I'll call 911. I could almost hear him gritting his teeth. Kurt, this is far from the first time I've been threatened, but… He looked to one side. This may be the first time I feel it's justified. I want to answer your questions, believe me, but I can't yet. It has to do with instructions, but only after you've read the letter will I be able to give you the answers in the context they're required. I snorted. Jesus, damn lawyers, what the hell does that even mean? Devereaux sighed. How far did you get in the letter? Well, I just found out that my wife has been having fun with some rich asshole artist for 5 years, so how far is that? Ignoring my question, he answered it with a question of his own. If I asked you how well your wife knew Jeremy before you read this letter, what would you say? My fingers tensed on the back of my chair. He looked at me sympathetically, but perhaps also with some superiority, and then he said, I'm not your enemy, Kurt. I understand why you feel that way. I promise you, I only want what is in your best interest and the best interest of your family. That's why I'm asking you to read the entire letter before you ask questions. Straightening up, I growled, I'm going to go get some air. He nodded. When I stepped outside, the afternoon was cold and crisp. I left my jacket inside to feel the breeze on my skin. I was sweating, and my face was still damp from my previous ablutions. Leaning on the porch railing, I stared into the distance and tried to pull myself together. I wished I'd never met Marcus Devereaux. Damn it. I wished my wife had died before I could send for him, killed in a car accident or from sudden organ failure caused by her cancer. I could harbor the illusion that I was loved, but when that illusion was taken from me, my only chance for peace was to go back to the house and read that damned letter. I hated her. For the first time in my life, I truly hated her. Full of determination, I walked back into the dining room and sat down in a chair without even looking at Devereaux. Over the next 5 years, I really became your partner in our home. I was able to contribute financially and emotionally. I became a better mother and wife as more of the burden of our daily lives fell on me. Your stress levels have decreased, and our life together and quiet time together has improved as I have become the wife you deserved. I am so ashamed to admit this. I was always meant to be that for you. Otherwise, I should have found a way to rediscover myself without stepping outside of our marriage. But I didn't. I can't say I regret the time I spent with Jeremy because I don't think I could have become the person I need to be without that time. I truly believe that our marriage would not have survived because I would have become resentful of you for my weaknesses. It may seem silly, but I was a fool. My affair with Jeremy had 2 ends. The first was after Matt was born. I wanted to rededicate myself to our family and marriage. Jeremy wasn't happy, but he understood. It may seem implausible, but he always respected you. I know some lovers make fun of their spouses, but that wasn't the case with him. He knew you were my first and greatest love, and he knew he was stealing my time from you, even if I didn't admit it to myself until later. I told him about you in the best possible terms, and he was happy to hear about you and our family. He encouraged me to do what was best for us. He loved me enough to let me go when the time was right. I helped him find a new personal assistant, a young man named Alan. He was perhaps more competent in his field than I was, since he was in finance. I know that he was able to help Jeremy understand the financial intricacies of his family's fortune much better than I could. Jeremy and I stayed in touch, but at a distance. I didn't want to risk you finding out about my affair after it was over, so we communicated very infrequently. By then, your business had taken off, and I finally told you that I had been made redundant. We could afford to stay at home and look after the kids. That's how I lived for the next 2 years, until I heard from Jeremy that he needed my help again. At first, I was going to refuse his request. I still cared about him, but I didn't want to jeopardize our marriage any further. Then he informed me that he had cancer. My world was suddenly turned upside down. I still loved him, albeit much weaker. If he had only been my friend, I would have helped him. But he was both my lover and the man who helped me become the woman I was meant to be. I could not refuse him this request. Then I asked you to let me put my children in daycare for 3 days a week. Matt was about a year old at the time. I told you I wanted to help a charitable organization, and it wasn't exactly a lie. Alan was helping Jeremy pour money into a charity that funds grants for artists in need. But mostly I was there to help Jeremy through the last days of his life. The cancer was discovered too late and he was dying. There were treatments available, but their chances of success were so slim and his quality of life would be so poor that he decided against them. I was mostly his friend and caregiver, but a few times he wanted to make love. I couldn't say no to him. It was something that would ease his pain and let him know that we would be loved and remembered after he was gone. He managed to live for 6 months, but spent the last 2 in hospice care. I only saw him a few times, but I was there for him when he died. He held my hand and told me I was the love of his life. He knew he wasn't the love of my life, and I didn't lie to him, but I let him know that I loved him and would miss him. Then he closed his eyes. Less than an hour later, he was gone. You may remember that during the second trimester of my pregnancy, I had a hard time with Paula. I was moody and angry, sometimes snapping at you. Forgive me for that. You treated me like a queen, as you always had. I let you believe it was hormones, and partly it was, but mostly I was mourning the death of a friend, and I had no one to share my grief with. I regret a lot of things. I regret a lot of things. I had no other lovers before or after him. Everything in my life after that period was an open book for you. At times I lied to cover up what I did during those years, but only about that. After Jeremy's death, and even in the years between my 2 affairs with him, I devoted myself solely to you and our family. I'm sure that's small consolation. I should have been faithful in those years too, but I wasn't. I'm sorry I hurt you by telling you this. I was ready to take that secret to my grave. My reasons were both selfless and selfish. You deserve nothing but happiness. I have no doubt that if I lived to be 100 years old, I would not stumble again. If I told you about my infidelity, I know you would divorce me, and you would have every right to do so. But that wouldn't make you happy. I don't know if you could ever trust or love again. I don't know if you will be able to after you read this. And I have loved you. All my life I've loved you. What I've done in the past doesn't sound like the actions of a loving spouse, but at the time I convinced myself it was. It wasn't, and I'm sorry, but just as I couldn't hurt you, I couldn't lose you, so I never told you. I never would have told you if it weren't for 2 things. First, the cancer that took Jeremy's life is the same as mine. It's not the most common type of cancer, but it's not rare, so no surprise. But it has a genetic component, a vulnerability that comes from an abnormality. Having a copy of the gene in one parent slightly increases the likelihood that a person will succumb to the disease. Having copies in both parents greatly increases the odds and makes the disease much more prevalent at a young age. I don't know if Jeremy had one or both copies of the gene. I assume he did, since he died so young and since he had several early deaths from cancer-like diseases in his family tree. I know I have one copy, and I know I have caused you great pain with this confession. I'm afraid what follows will hurt you the most. There is a strong possibility that Matt is not your biological son, and a smaller but negligible possibility that Paula is not your biological daughter. And if they both carry those genes, they are at significant risk of early death. I pointed to Devereaux. Have a drink. He didn't move. My voice progressed. Give me the goddamn drink, you goddamn loan shark. He handed me a glass across the table, and I tipped it back. I have no excuse for what I did. I loved both you and Jeremy. You're both very much alike. As you've joked with me in the past, I have a certain type. There's no way you could have known that. I knew I was his only lover just as I was your only lover, so the illness didn't matter. I regret what I did, but it can only go so far, and I'm sure I'm long past the point where those words mean anything to me. Our children are in danger. I know you'll do the right thing. I would have, but I had so much energy and there was no way I could explain to you and them why I wanted them tested for the dominant version of the anomaly. If I had just asked you to do it, you would have found out about my infidelity without any explanation at a time when I was too weak to talk to you and you were in too much pain to go through another tragedy. So I have to do what I did at the beginning of our marriage and ask you to be strong. There is another factor, but it has to do with finances. That is why I hired Mr. Devereaux to help deliver this letter to you. I chose him not only because of his knowledge of the relevant laws, but also because of his life experience. I believe he will help you make the right decisions for yourself and our family. I will not take the liberty of telling you which ones, because I have lost any right to claim that I am a worthy partner in your life. I cannot put into words how much I regret not doing what I did. I can only say that, despite all my shortcomings, I love you. You are the greatest love of my life. You are the strongest person I know, with the greatest capacity for love I have ever seen. Please take that capacity and direct it first to our children, and then, if you can, to finding a new partner who is truly worthy of you. I know I have broken your heart with this letter. I hope I haven't broken it in such a way that the best woman can't repair it. With endless love and eternal regret, Lynn. I gestured to the glass and Devereaux poured me another. Another more irritated gesture brought another finger. We both sipped in silence. What is the financial question? It was a question phrased as a statement, boring and devoid of meaning. After Mr. Stein's death, Jeremy donated most of his fortune but deposited a significant amount in an offshore account. He handed me a piece of paper across the table. It had a lot of zeros on it. Lynn was given access to this account, but she never withdrew any money. She told me that she thought your family was getting along just fine without it, and that she couldn't think of a way to explain the sudden appearance of the money. The latter doesn't matter anymore, so she wanted you to think, hell no. Think about how this could benefit your family. If you don't want to be involved, the money could still go to your kids in the form of a trust fund, college funds. I snorted. Yeah, my kids. I took another sip. Damn bitch. We sat in silence for a few moments, then he said, you raised them, didn't you? Drove them to school, nursed them when they were sick, fussed over them? I don't know you, Kurt. But Lynn did. She was sure that even if it turned out that one or both of your younger children weren't your biological children, you'd still consider yourself their father. She was right. Why the hell should I take care of his kids? I grumbled. Hell yes, you do. They're my kids. She took almost everything else away from me in the time it took me to read that damn letter. She has no right to take them away either. Marcus leaned forward slightly, a conciliatory note in his voice. Kurt, you have a lot of decisions to make, more than might be apparent at first glance. Lynn asked me to be here to help you work through all aspects and come to whatever decision you feel is best for you. Bullshit. That I'm here to help you, or that Lynn wanted you to make a decision that would be good for you? I tilted my head. Definitely the latter. She clearly didn't care about me, which means that if she sent you, it was only for what she needed, not what was best for me, which means the former. Devereaux sighed. She did love you. You don't know me. I realize that. But I asked you some questions before you read the letter. What did you answer when I asked what kind of wife she was? A great wife. The best. Yeah, until I found out she'd been having fun with another guy for half a decade. Jesus, what do you want me to say? Oh, that was 12 years ago. That's all water under the bridge? Or maybe, well, I don't want to speak ill of the dead. Screw it. Lynn can... I paused, trying to find the words. Let her burn in hell, I don't care. There was that annoyingly flat voice again. I understand. No, you don't understand, asshole. My wife cheated on me. She did it for 5 years. And you're sitting here like a statue from Easter Island, in a 3-piece suit because you're paid to appease me. And I'm not going to be pacified. Devereaux nodded slowly. You asked why your wife hired me, and I said I couldn't divulge my qualifications until you read the letter. Your wife wanted someone with specific legal experience. That was the easiest option. In fact, I could have named a dozen more qualified lawyers than me if it came to that. But then she wanted to know more personal things, the reason she revealed only to me, though I think 1 or 2 people she'd talked to before me could have put it together if they'd tried. She needed someone who could be fair and impartial. I was already working as a temporary judge. It's a task that gives lawyers a chance to see if they want to go all the way before fully taking on a case. I decided it wasn't for me. She needed someone who had personally dealt with infidelity, someone whose life had been directly affected by it. I looked at his left hand. The ring wasn't there. He nodded. I'm a match too. And finally, Lynn needed someone who would zealously advocate for her client. It's not hard, it's part of the job. But she walked me through several scenarios, especially related to family law, and asked me which side I preferred to advocate. Collectively, they make up the bulk of your situation. I snorted derisively. So because you answered her questions correctly, because you said you'd side with her, you got the job? That's a hell of a dishonest way to act. No, I sided with my husband. She needed someone on your side to make sure you got the best advice for your situation. After listening to her whole story, I told her there were things I would advocate for that she might not like, and her answer was simply, "What's best for Kurt and my kids?" I wondered. He was a lawyer. That made him suspicious from the start. He had been hired by my wife. Technically, the client was her, not me. He could be lying for her or for himself. There were a lot of zeros in that piece of paper. But Lynn was right. I didn't need the money. I didn't even want it, it seemed to me at the time. He made another remark, seeing me weighing my options. There is one more thing to consider. Until 10 minutes ago, I was the only person alive who knew what was in the envelope. If you want other counselors, you're going to have to widen that circle. And you know what they say about a secret. 3 can keep it if 2 are dead. Yes. I frowned. Great, you're here. Let's talk. You have some important decisions to make. It's 3. And I assume you need to pick up the kids by 6? I nodded. Okay. Let's assume that not all of those decisions will be made today. I'm sure some of them you'll want to sleep through. But let's make sure you understand how things stand. Fair enough? Taking my silence as agreement, he continued. 1. There's no reason to think that anyone other than you, me, and possibly Alan knows about Lynn's infidelity. There's no reason to think Alan cares. He's happy running the charity he and Jeremy started. So Lynn's infidelity can remain a mystery if you so desire. 2nd, you agree that your children are your children, regardless of whether they share DNA with you, yes? I reluctantly nodded. 3rd, your children's lives could be in danger. They'll need genetic testing to find out if that's the case or not. 4th, there is a large sum of money in an offshore account. I can provide it to you in various ways if you wish, all perfectly legal and clean, without revealing how you got it. You'll have to pay taxes on it, but… He shrugged his shoulders. 5. Lynn and Jeremy are dead. Jeremy no longer has an inheritance. He gave away all his money to charities and friends. Even if he did, it's been over a decade since Lynn cheated him, and there's almost no proof. I took a sip of whiskey. I guess there is. Then let's put the money aside for the time being. It's been sitting in an offshore account for 12 years. It can wait a few more weeks. The more pressing issue is your children. But to help you decide what you want to do with them, I have to ask you to be honest about some things that will cause you to have very strong emotional reactions right now. Snorting and taking another sip, I said, "Gee, you think?" I shook my head. Struggling wasn't going to help, even if it seemed natural at the moment. Okay, ask. Those questions I asked about Lynn earlier, about what she was like as a person, a wife, and a mother. He held up a hand. I know you're rethinking them now, but if I'd never crossed the threshold of your house, you'd still think that. Do your children think that way too? Or at least about something similar, just from a child's point of view? I pondered his question. Jenny and Lynn would snap sometimes, but they were teenagers, just like Matt and me. And seeing them mourn her, I grudgingly replied, yes, yes. At least in their eyes, she was a good mom to them. And… shit. And in mine, I suppose, too. I'd retroactively divorce her cheating ass if I could, but I probably wouldn't fight her for joint custody, even knowing how she betrayed me. She was a good mother. Marcus asked quietly, do you want to change that? Do you think your children would be better or worse off if they knew what she did? There was a large stained glass window in the dining room. Lynn liked it. She liked the natural light coming into the room. I was often annoyed by it. It could be beautiful, but it could also be overwhelming. The afternoon sun only illuminated part of the room. Marcus was in the shade. I felt like I was being interrogated, and there were no right answers to any of the questions. I don't know. He squeezed his fingers. And I think you do. If the kids find out, what will it do to them? Will they hate her? What will it do to them? What will it do to you? Right now, it's just the 2 of us who know this secret, and would you gain anything from it becoming known that your wife has been cheating on you for years? I felt my temperature rising. That's not right. She shouldn't get away with it. The old lawyer looked directly at me. She's dead, Kurt. She died a slow, agonizing death, knowing she would have to reveal her infidelity, knowing that the man she called her greatest love would hate her. Don't you think she got away with it? I lowered my gaze to my glass. Sort of. Yeah, it seems that way. I, I'll never get my pound of flesh. I'll never be able to pounce on her, call her any name I want, try to hurt her like she hurt me. I'll never be able to beat the shit out of her lover. I'll never be able to ask why. Really why? Not this. I picked up the letter. This pile of shit, damn excuses. Echoes of memories flashed through my mind, once cherished but now tainted. I muttered, nowhere to go. Hmm? Shaking my head, I returned my gaze to Marcus. Lynn said something to me when I was trying to come to terms with my father's death. Something I told my kids to help them get over her. Grief is a love that has nowhere to go. He nodded. I've heard that before. I can see how it can be comforting. My voice was rough with pain and anger. Yes, but here's the thing. I couldn't contain the rage on my face, but it wasn't directed at him. It was directed at the ghost in the room. What's hate when there's nowhere to go? Can you answer that question for me? Now it was his turn to drink. I don't know, He grinned. Lawyers use words to create precision, not to highlight the truth. If you're looking for a poet, I'm afraid I'll have to step aside. He tilted his head to one side. But if I had to guess, fury. I raised my glass in greeting. Not a bad answer. Maybe. I'll think about it. Sip finished the scotch in my glass. He lifted the bottle and I shook my head. It was time to speak up. Thanks, but no. This is good scotch. Did Lynn pay for it out of her cash fund? His teeth were blindingly white in the shadows. No, she paid for a much less expensive bottle, but this? He shook his head. This seems to be a case where a quality drink is called for. This bottle is from my own collection. Well, thank you. It's nice to see someone looking out for my interests. Marcus said softly, her too, you know. At the end of the day, I mean. I haven't spent much time with her, but I've spent a lot of time among cheating spouses, both work-related and... He looked sadly at his left hand. And, well, other places. He smiled at me again, this time sadly, and there was real emotion in his voice and face. Not a reserved but understanding lawyer, but a man with a past. You can sense who is remorseful and who is faking it. Lynn, no matter what I said, was sorry for what she'd done, for what she would have had to do to you by revealing it. Yeah, but you can have coffee for that and a couple bucks. I shook my head. We're veering off topic. I can throw a pity party on my own time. Tapping my fingers on the table, I continued our planning session. Okay, I agree. There's no point in telling the kids their mom was a cheating whore, but I still need to get them tested. I can arrange that for you. Concierge doctor, very confidential. HIPAA would be the least restrictive agreement imposed on him. Then the question is, do you just want a health check or do you want to find out if you're their biological father? Hell, I don't know. I stood up and looked out the window. If I find out that one of them is so vulnerable that both parents must have the gene, that would tell me all I need to know, wouldn't it? No, unfortunately. Your wife only has it as a recessive trait. We don't know and only suspect that in Jeremy it was dominant. We don't know if you have it recessive or dominant. To find out, you'll have to undergo a medical examination as well. You shouldn't refuse, but even that won't give you a definite answer. It was quiet outside. That's what happens in the suburbs on a school day after lunch. I remembered my kids playing on the swings that hung from the tree in our front yard. Now they were gone, and the kids were trying to climb on them all together. I smiled at that memory. Just thinking about it made me want to cry. I'm not sure I want him. Marcus sighed behind me in the semi-darkness. I understand. At the end of the day, it's your decision. But I think you need to know. I turned slightly to look at him. Why? I don't know you very well, Kurt. This conversation, some information from Lynn. I don't know if you're the type of person who can accept that the knowledge is there, but it's inaccessible. As for me, well, curiosity would kill me. But more importantly, you need to know it for your children. I thought we just agreed that children never need to know. Marcus tilted his head. Don't need to. Yes. Could they accidentally find out? That's another question. Your oldest is 18 now. What if she decides to honor Lynn's memory by buying the whole family one of those DNA kits sold on genealogy websites for Christmas? She never met your parents or Lynn's mom. That's certainly the type of thing someone could do, and if she does, then... He fell silent, giving me a chance to come to a conclusion on my own. Then she'll find out in a few weeks that she has a bunch of family connections that Matt doesn't, or Paul, and then the questions will start. And then, shit. My head was splitting. Well, thank you, Lynn. You've left another broken heart for me. I don't even have the choice of knowing or not knowing. I waved my hand toward Marcus. Fine, run tests on all of us. Medical exams and stuff like that. We'll just tell the kids we're being tested for an anomaly, and then, if I find out, I guess. I think I don't know. I'll find out as soon as I find out this or that. He stood up. Then I guess that's all we can do for today. Think, when you can, what you'd like to do with the money. I know you're mad at her, but think of what it could do for your children. I would suggest that you try to put those thoughts out of your head, but I know that is an impossible task. Instead, try to focus on your children. They need you now more than ever, and perhaps you will find strength in serving them. We walked to the front door, leaving behind the dinner table, the ritual objects, and the letter that had shattered the happy illusion of my marriage. On the threshold, he patted me on the shoulder, a strangely intimate gesture for a man I barely knew, and very welcome. Human contact almost broke me. Kurt, I'll be honest, I thought things were going to go very differently. I don't know how you were able to endure all of this without breaking down and kicking me out of your house. I don't think I could have. I have no doubt that you can get through this. I nodded, then said with a tremor in my voice, "Thank you." He hesitated. "Maybe I'll stay a little longer. I'd be glad to." He shook his head furiously. No, no, I need to be alone to try to recover a little before I take the kids. I need to try to show them my game face. Marcus nodded, sympathizing. "I'll let you know when the doctor comes to take samples. I'll have him send me the results so your kids can't intercept them. We can meet in my office as soon as we get them to discuss the next steps for your family and money." We said our goodbyes and he left. As soon as the car was out of sight, I slammed the door shut, giving up control of my body and emotions as I was left alone. My sobs echoed through the empty house, more like the sobs of a child than a man. I had lost my wife once before, a month ago. Now I had lost her again, and the second loss was far worse than the first. I stayed there, almost catatonic, until the alarm clock on my phone rang, letting me know it was time to pick up the kids. I cleaned up myself and the house as quickly as possible and then left, trying to make a brave face. They saw me crying, but I brushed it off. They thought I was just mourning their mother and trying to be strong for them. They were right, but they were also very, very wrong. That week my mask came off several times. There was venom in my voice as I talked about their mother from time to time. Jenny caught me looking at Lynn's wedding picture with hatred. I think of all the kids, she suspected that I was mourning more than just her mother's death. But she accepted it. We all grieve in our own way, and I think she wanted to believe that my anger was just the anger of a father, left alone to raise his children, an irrational anger that would pass. I did my best to keep that illusion alive for her. The doctor came and went. I explained to the kids that we were doing medical testing to see if they had the same gene as their mother. They mostly just shrugged and answered yes. It was silly, but I know I held my breath for a moment when Matt and Paula were swabbed. The results came back a few days later, and Marcus returned to my house with 4 new items that would determine my fate. 4 sealed envelopes with our results. The bottle and glasses were at the ready again, but this time we didn't know if the news was good or bad, and yet a little drink to calm our nerves seemed appropriate. Before the main event, we talked a bit about nothing. I was stalling. I understood that, and so did he, but he didn't insist. Finally, feeling foolish, I opened the first results envelope. I was clean, without the slightest sign of the genetic abnormality Lynn suffered from. Jenny was next. I already knew she might be at risk, and if Lynn had lied to me about when she started cheating, or if she had multiple lovers, I'd rather find out sooner than later. Jennifer was my daughter in every way. I exhaled, not knowing I was holding my breath. But then I saw another result. She has a recessive variant of the anomaly, just like her mother. She'll have to get cancer screenings more often for the rest of her life. A small price to pay for more, though. My hand hovered over Matt's envelope, but I shifted it to Paula's hand. Perhaps it was cowardly, but he was my only son. To discover that one of my children wasn't biologically mine would be devastating, but it would be even more painful to find out he wasn't mine. Sexism and patriarchy? Yes. But we feel what we feel. When I opened it, I discovered that my girl was mine, and that she, like me, was free of the vice that took her mother's life. I shuddered. I almost asked Marcus to open it, but I couldn't. I couldn't. This was my life and my son's life, and I had to face the truth. I tore open the paper and scanned the results it contained. My eyes filled with tears and I began to sob. Marcus uttered, "Kurt, I'm so sorry, My voice shook. Mine. Mine. He's mine." I couldn't get any more words out because of the emotions I couldn't control. He was mine, and the anomaly hadn't touched him. My children were mine in every way, not only by right of the fact that I had raised them, but by blood. There might be those who would find it silly and old-fashioned that it didn't matter if they shared DNA or not. In a way, they were right. But it wasn't the DNA that I cared about. It was that my love for them was completely free of their mother's lies. She had let me believe they were mine without knowing for sure. And now I knew. Irrationally. But in that moment, it was more important to me than anything else in the world. Marcus waited for me to come to my senses, sat down at the table and sipped his whiskey while I went to the guest bathroom and washed my face. When I came back, he said, "Have you decided what to do with the money yet?" "I don't need them." He raised an eyebrow. "Don't need or don't want to accept the money because of where it came from?" "Don't be a pedant." Marcus smiled broadly. "I'm a lawyer. That's my job." He shook his head. "I realize you may not want the money yourself. They seem tainted. But what about your children? For college or as a nest egg for the first time? I could put the money in trust funds for each of them, and we could tell them it came from life insurance. They'd never know. I'd find out. And look, even if I knew it's money, you can change it. That's the whole point of money." He grinned. "If I use it to pay for their college, I'm not paying for their college. My money goes to something else. By some roundabout way, I got his money anyway. If I put it in trust as collateral, I'm not giving them that collateral, so I'm using his money instead of mine." He shook his head. "Maybe. But I think you're looking at it the wrong way." A smirk appeared on his face. "I'm afraid this will require even more pedantry on your part, but perhaps when I'm done, you'll better understand that we're plaintiffs." I shuddered, remembering how I had shouted at him during our first meeting. His demeanor had changed and a seasoned speaker had taken the stage. There used to be lawsuits called alienation of affection. Some states still have them, although this is not one of them. They were designed to punish the cheating partner so that the husband or wife could get compensation from the person who seduced their spouse. They went out of fashion for several reasons. No-fault divorce has become the norm these days, and lawsuits were simply never that effective. If a person had enough money to sue, they had ways to hide that money. They were hard to prove. All in all, they just weren't worth pursuing. But we still have plenty of other ways to take money away from people for their misdeeds. Pain and suffering, emotional distress, lots of reasons. Even if Jeremy were alive, you could never sue him and get money from him. If Lynn were alive and you divorced her, you probably wouldn't have gotten anywhere near what you should have gotten from that account. It probably wouldn't even have been discovered in a lawsuit. But now it's here. You have access to it. You need to stop thinking of it as Jeremy's gift to your wife and instead see what it can be to you. A settlement. It's payment for a lawsuit you didn't file and couldn't win. You hate her. Great, she's dead, and her betrayal is exposed to you. Do you hate him? Great. He's dead. He really was the last of his kind, and you can take his money and do whatever you want with it, up to and including living the idle, rich lifestyle he hated. They hurt you, both of them, by their selfishness and deceit, by their cowardly posthumous confession to Lynn that prevented you from taking your anger out on her. I agree with you on everything, but here's where we disagree. Money, as you say, is fungible. They're out there. They will go to charity, or they will lie around and accumulate interest, or they will eventually be stolen by some very smart kid in Eastern Europe with a laptop and a dream. Or they could give you and your children a better life. I growled. I'll know where they came from. Good? Then every time you use it, you can imagine you're pissing on their graves. They were selfish. You're allowed to be selfish too? Your wife has put so much on your shoulders that no husband should have to face. Her infidelity, the fear that you've become a cuckold, the fear that your children might die before their time, the need to hide what she did from your children, all of it. He shook his head. I liked Lynn while I knew her. I believe she was sorry for what she did. But sometimes regret isn't enough. She hurt you. Both of you. Don't hurt yourself more by hurting two dead people. Take the money, Kurt. Give some of it to your kids. Tell them it's your investment. Take the money out of your company or invest it in your company, if that's your preference. But leave it on the table? No. It may seem principled, but it's not. You're not taking a bribe. You're getting your benefit. I growled, becoming enraged at the mere thought that some amount of dirty money could somehow help me deal with this pain. Is that what you were doing during the divorce? Getting benefits? His face lowered and his body went limp. No. I opened my mouth, but he said quietly, no, I cheated, Kurt. I was the one who deserved retribution. He turned his face away. Lynn wanted the one who cheated to be by your side, the one who destroyed those he loved because of his own selfishness. I cheated for years on a faithful spouse with a younger woman because I could. Because I felt it was my duty as a man, a successful man. The disgust he felt was almost palpable. A man. I was a heartless boy, stupid and self-centered. I had everything He poured himself another shot glass and drained it in seconds. Sheila found out. The affair was over, but she found out because of some little slip-up. She didn't say what it was about. It didn't matter anyway. She found out and everything fell apart. My marriage, my relationship with my kids, my friendships, everything that really mattered in my life. I wanted to try to make amends, and she wouldn't accept anything from me, wouldn't even try to work with me to... He shook his head. I couldn't do anything for her. She divorced me, took everything. I gave her more than she asked for. Not so she'd forgive me. I knew she never would. But so that maybe she could get over it. But she couldn't. The anger ate her alive. For the last year of her life, she raged with resentment, with injustice. She had every right to think that, but it was killing her. I was killing her. Her heart gave up. I killed the love of my life with my selfishness. He stared into the empty glass. My children. It's been 10 years, and they're just now starting to talk to me again. I'm very grateful to them for letting me into their lives at all. I just met my 5-year-old grandson last month. I miss him so much. Marcus shook his head again, trying to clear it. The lawyer's mask was back in place, but it hung precariously, unable to completely hide the pain. Kurt, take the money or don't take it. I think you should do it, but you won't. You won't forgive any of it. No court in the world would require a plaintiff to forgive an abuser as a condition of sentencing. But even if you don't take the money, you have to find a way not to feel hate. After all, he looked at me, eyes moist. I've been thinking a lot about what you asked me last week. What is it about hate that you can't get rid of? I thought it was rage, but it's just a point on a path, like the 5 stages of grief. When hate reaches the end of that path, when it really has nowhere to go, it ends in death. Hatred that has nowhere to go is death. It will kill you. Maybe not your body, but... He snorted, and his voice cracked. Like my poor Sheila. But it will kill your soul. Turn you into a man who can only measure the time until his demise, whether alone or with others. He raised his eyes to the ceiling. It killed my Sheila, now it's killing me. The hate. I hate myself. Lynn hated herself at the end, too. I envied her, envied that she'd soon stop living with it. Because I never could get rid of it. For 10 years, I couldn't. But finally, my little grandson, I can feel the self-loathing starting to fade. Just a little bit. I can only pray to God that it happens fast enough to save me. His face turned toward me again, tears streaming down it. Don't be me, Kurt, or Sheila. Find a way to let go of the hate. Epilogue 10 years later. Hey, Lynn. I brushed some dirt off her headstone. It had been a while since anyone had visited her. The kids had moved out of state. Jenny had married and had 2 kids, and Matt was expecting his firstborn. Paula. Paula was trying to find her place in the world. I had to believe she would eventually succeed. I put flowers on my ex-wife's grave. Lilies. Her favorite. I know I didn't visit her. I won't apologize. I don't owe you anything. Our ledger will never add up, but I needed to talk to you one last time. The cold air made me more attentive, but also uncomfortable. At 54, there were aches and pains that hadn't been there 10 years ago, and the cold exacerbated some of them. But that didn't matter. It wouldn't take long. I hated you for a long time, but I loved you a little too. I still do. You were, for all your faults, a good mother. After your affair, you were even a good partner in your own way. The lie was, I sighed. Never mind. I tried to kill the love for you in me, tried to drown it in hate and anger, but I never managed to do it completely. And I probably never will. I looked up at the gray sky. It would be snowing again soon. I want to thank you for the last thing. Not for the money. Marcus finally convinced me that I owed you for what you went through. This wasn't some kind of gift. It wasn't even a bribe. It was compensation for what you did. No, it was for Marcus. You saved my life by choosing him. He convinced me to let go of my hatred for you. It took a long time, and like love, it still lives in my heart. But if it wasn't for him, I think your betrayal would have killed me. So thank you for your choice. He saved my life. I nodded to myself. I didn't have anything else to say. I walked a few rows down and a few more back, then sat on the floor and opened my leather briefcase. Hey, Marcus. Long time no see. Pulling out 2 glasses and a bottle of scotch, I poured each of us a glass and saluted with a marker. I'm sorry I didn't stop by sooner. I only learned of your passing from a mutual friend. I would have come to the service if we'd stayed in touch. His temples burned slightly. I'm very sorry too. I wish we could have stayed friends. You got me through the darkest time of my life, but hell, you're the one who figured it out. Being around you, I was constantly reminded of Lynn and what she did. I grinned. Another thing she screwed up in my life. I patted his marker. Thanks, Marcus. You were supposed to be my friend. I'm sorry it didn't happen. But you saved my life. I can never thank you enough for that. I spoke to your son, and I'm glad you were able to find your way back too. I finished my drink and left both glasses on the rock. Standing up, I opened the bottle and poured the contents onto his grave. It was an inadequate tribute to a great but flawed man I could never fully thank. Back in the car, I called home. Hi, honey. Yeah, I'm done. Do you want to go out tonight? I kind of want to celebrate. Celebrate what? Take your pick. I'm going out with the gorgeous lady I married. Yeah. Yeah, okay. I love you, Deb. I'll be there soon. Thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed. Subscribe to my channel and watch for the next video.